truth.
Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited to be back here on the Thursday podcast. It's been a little time between this current episode and the last one I did, but sometimes when real life kicks in, you got to handle some things. So real life takes over. You gotta do what you gotta do. Nonetheless, I am your host, the H Double Heart Henry, of course, and your lady to her is not with us today. She will be back on as we start to bring some of our couples back on to talk about our topic for this season 4. And as you know, we are still in season 4, and we are still talking about in sickness and in health, and we are still navigating around this topic, around this precise insert of the marriage vows. We are exploring several facets of this topic and the challenges health and wellness can play into your long-term goals of your relationship. So if you're ready to get married, or if you're already married, these conversations are definitely for you. Some things can happen, and there's some definite challenges that can happen to you as you get older. And if you're not that old yet, trust me, you will be. So today is episode 9, and we're doing the second part of our in sickness and in mental health. First part was with my sister, Mikhail White Davis, who is a licensed professional clinical counselor. And we discussed mental health and emotional health in the Black community, children, and relationships. She did have some wonderful and informative insight. And one thing I like to do is get perspectives from the male view and the female view. So today I have a guest who's also a licensed counselor. So today he's going to share some insight on mental and emotional health and how it affects relationships. But before we do that, I got to let you know this episode is brought to you by none other than Sons of SPPhillips. Go to sonsofspphillips.com. Sons of SPPhillips is an online boutique that sells new and slightly used designer and name brand clothing. You can get custom apparel and some custom accessories, anything to make you look good. Sons of SPPhillips has a little bit of everything for everybody. T-shirts, sweatshirts, cups, everything. So you definitely want to check them out. www.sonsofspphillips.com. $1 million style for the $100 man. We give attitude to style, a dress code, and inspired by the people and motivated by the people and motivated by the culture. That is Sons of SPPhillips. All right, everybody. Before we just jump into this episode and introduce my next guest, I want to kind of touch base and give you guys some context on what we're discussing here and just kind of give you the meaning behind a few things. So again, we're talking about this particular part of the marriage vows called in sickness and in health. And we just kind of want you to think back, how do you interpret that in the context of mental health? And, just have to think to yourself, does it resonate differently for you when you're thinking about mental well-being versus physical health? And I know for me, myself, never did. And I think I truly still don't. But over the last few years, watching my father succumb to cancer, I still did not put mental well-being into the equation when I hear in sickness and in health, when that all becomes a part of the whole aspect of it. So I also want you guys to think about, have you or someone close to you had to navigate mental health challenges within the marriage or in the family setting? How did it shape you, and how's your understanding of commitment and support after experiencing that? So my next guest I'm going to bring on, we're going to touch on all of that, make sure you guys have an understanding. Again, for those who are already married or looking to get married someday, these are episodes that you are going to want to tune into, because these are real life situations that happen in marriage, and they will be challenging. So my next guest, go ahead and introduce yourself, my friend.
Appreciate it. Yeah. My name is Brandon Willis. I'm a licensed clinical social worker supervisor in the state of Texas. I work currently full-time. I work in an inpatient psychiatric hospital, and I've been doing that for a little over 10 years. I supervise a group of therapists and social workers, case managers in the hospital. And I also work in a small private practice out of Dallas. It's called The Empowering Space, where I do telehealth therapy. Been doing that for about 5 years. And what started my career in social work, I actually worked as a program director for a suicide crisis hotline. There was a 24-hour hotline for people to call in when they had any sort of depression, anxiety going on, maybe didn't have a family member immediately available or didn't feel like they needed to call. the police or emergency medical services to get some help. So been working in social work since 2013 and been in the field and worked quite a few different places. And originally from Dallas, went to college in Houston, and here I'm now. Live out here in Austin, Texas. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Fantastic. I take it by the sound of your voice that you enjoy what you do, no matter how challenging it gets, correct?
Yeah, definitely. It's
okay.
I think it's kind of a personal calling, but it's definitely, I can't think of anything else that I would have enjoyed as much as I do right now.
Okay. All right. That's great. That's great. Before we jump in to our relationship, I mean, not in our relationship, but into our conversation, we have a segment in our show for our sneakerheads called A Moment in Shoes, right? So we get a lot of feedback on our shoes on our Instagram and things like that. And my wife has a pretty deep and extensive collection, and I'm trying to catch up to her. And we like to bring our guests on to see pretty much what they're walking and talking with. So why don't you show us what you got today?
Got you. So I got a crisp pair of my Converse. This is my everyday kind of walking shoe. Definitely something that's gone back a few years for me. I was in high school. I was kind of that skater, emo type kid. So this is the one thing I've been reformed. Don't do that with my Chucks. So I wear these. I have some others. It's from a brand called Nothing New. And Nothing New is 100% sustainable product. And they make kind of similar shoes to Chucks. So any kind of Chuck style shoe, but I like a very basic, clean, one color type thing. So that's mine.
Yeah. I wear Chucks. I have a couple. At first I was a little bit insecure with wearing them because I got big feet, and certain Chucks make your feet look like a mile long. So, I got comfortable with them.
Yeah, it took me a little bit. I'll say the high tops are a little better, but really? I can make these look good every once in a while. Yeah, it makes a shoe be a little bit smaller with the high tops.
Yeah, my brother's feet are a little bit bigger than mine, but I saw him wearing them. I said, I think I can get away with it. So yeah, I got a couple pair. I rock them every once in a while. They're pretty comfortable. So I'm gonna pull out. I just got these. I haven't worn them anywhere yet, but these is my hold on. Air Max 90 Drift, right there. Oh. That's what we do. So no, not at all. It was either these or a pair of Jordans. I always pulling out my Jordans. I said, let me get him a rest a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's what we get. My wife, she really, I got those to put her to shame. I don't even think she's seen them yet. When she do, she'll give me some attitude, but that's okay. She'll be all right. All right, Brandon, that's good stuff. Hey, so as we jump into this conversation in sickness and in mental health, I want you to kind of elaborate on the types of mental health. And we had the discussion before, and if anyone has seen the episode that I had with Mikhail, the last episode, and even the new listeners, you should go back and see it. Late in the conversation, we had a conversation about mental health, and the term I use is pigeonhole. How everything that's wrong with somebody is kind of pigeonholed under mental health. And Michaela kind of elaborated that might not always be the case, because mental health can be so many different things, and some people could be suffering from emotional health or something else. And even though people need emotional help, we automatically think there's something mentally wrong with us when we say mental health, and people kind of back off and standoffish from getting mental help or the mental health conversation. And that's one of the things that we want to stop today, especially when it comes to your relationship. Don't be afraid to seek out the help that you need personally and in a relationship. And so if you could just kind of elaborate on like different mood disorders, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, and psychotic disorders, whatever it is, how you classify it, if you could just share your perspective on it, that would be great.
Okay. So mental health itself is kind of just an overarching broad term for some diagnoses that have something to do with the mind, right? So there's kind of the more common ones that we see, which are kind of fall more in the emotional realm. So like major depressive disorder. So for most people, if you go to a doctor and get diagnosed with depression, they're going to give you a depression diagnosis called major depressive disorder. And previously would have been called clinical depression, or if people say, I got diagnosed with depression, that's typically the diagnosis that you got. Anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety disorders is the more common diagnosis that you get in when you get an anxiety diagnosis. And those are kind of the ones that are fairly easily treatable with therapy by itself. Obviously, there's medication that can treat those, but most people that have depression, they have difficulty getting out of bed, difficulty taking care of their hygiene, feeling that helplessness, hopelessness, guilt, shame about specific things. So there's a lot of psychotherapy that can be done to help people get out of that state. There's also, again, medications that help people manage through those things, and those are diagnoses that have kind of a better prognosis than some of the more severe ones. And then going kind of to the higher end of the spectrum, you have the bipolar diagnoses. There's bipolar, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder is another diagnosis, is fairly common in the hospital setting that a lot of people don't necessarily know about in kind of in layman terms. But most people know bipolar disorder to be having highs and lows in your mood. The high we call mania, and the low we call depression. So in depression, whenever you have that episode, it's the same as what we have when you get diagnosed with major depression. So all of those symptoms that you have in a major depression diagnosis, you're going to have in the depression of bipolar. In a manic episode, usually I kind of describe to people a manic episode for a lot of people is really fun, which is why a lot of people who have bipolar diagnosis don't like to take their medication, because it takes away that edge that they get when they're in a manic episode. So that might be someone that has a lot of reckless spending. They might buy a couple cars, buy some houses, drain their savings account, but it's fun for them. There's a rush for them to be able to do those things. And they have like a lack of need for sleep. The risky behaviors, like several sexual partners they might have increased drug use. And so just a lot of risky behaviors that happen in a manic episode. And so bipolar disorder is one that really can be treated with psychotherapy, but it's kind of leaning more into those diagnoses that require medication to stabilize your mood. And so taking the medication for bipolar disorder is typically meant so that I don't have as severe of a manic episode or no manic episode at all, and I don't have as severe of a depression. So I'm kind of staying at my baseline is what we call it, to where you're not having those ups and downs. And then the more of the severe is we have schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder. And those are both chronic mental health disorders. Both don't necessarily have a cure. And you can do psychotherapy with that, but really medication is the best course of treatment for those. And so schizophrenia is hearing or seeing things that aren't there, disorganized behavior, disorganized speech. And schizoaffective disorder is basically if you put schizophrenia and bipolar together. So essentially someone would have manic episodes, depressive episodes, and they'd be at their baseline, but they would always have psychosis anywhere on that extreme. So they'll always have voices, they'll always have seeing things that aren't there, or some kind of hallucination, delusion, or organized behavior. So again, when we talk about mental health, there's a lot of other diagnoses that fit under that realm, but there's some that are really easily treatable and some that are really easy to see versus some that are masked by other behaviors that are sometimes difficult to spot and difficult to treat, specifically because of the fact that people who have the more severe diagnoses sometimes aren't the most compliant with treatment and don't have any interest in taking medication, seeing a doctor, seeing a therapist.
Right. With all that information, I get it. I understand a lot of what you're saying. There's baselines, there's this, and there's other episodes. I've heard it before. I'm no expert at all, so I don't want anybody thinking that I'm an expert in what you do, because I'm not. But as someone who used to work with a lot of special ed children, a lot of what you said, I remember seeing those on the IEPs, like manic episodes and depressions, medication, and, bipolar. So I've seen a lot of those on paper with the children I've worked with. And a lot of that, I'm going to say it like this. A lot of that information can be more frightening than it needs to be. Would you agree? For someone who doesn't know, and could probably be one of the premises why people in our community don't get the help they need. Okay. Yeah. So, go ahead.
Oh, well, just to comment on that, I think with, if you see like the actual clinical term for the diagnosis, the are fairly common. They have these heavy, hard hitting words that theory, right? So like I said, major depressive disorder is the diagnosis that you get when you have just general depression, but it's the word major in there kind of makes it sound like you're in the severe depression all the time, and that's not always the case. And then with kids, they have conduct disorders, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, right? There's all these big, hard hitting terms that make it really scary, and a lot of them are fairly easy treatable, if you put the time and effort into it.
Okay. So let me ask you this. It seems like now, over the last couple years, the conversation of mental health and mental health has been pretty much on the regular. It's still a taboo in our community, but the conversation is out there. How do you address anyone who might just be kind of really standoffish from getting the help they need? Before you answer that, do you ever see anybody for like marriage counseling or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. To answer your question, yeah.
Okay. How do you present that to them if that's an issue that might need to be addressed in that relationship at some point?
So I think probably the easiest way to approach it for me is whenever I'm doing couples counseling or marriage counseling, I typically try to use the first 2 or 3 sessions to really assess each partner in the relationship and to see if there's anything that I pick up. In my initial assessment with everyone, I always ask about any prior mental health concerns from either side. And so sometimes it's that easy as them telling me that they have some kind of prior mental health concern coming up. But if I notice that there's something that is pretty glaring as some kind of symptom that maybe one person hasn't addressed yet, hasn't accepted yet, then usually I try to wait a few sessions into it and just have a conversation overall about behaviors that you might see with someone that has the diagnosis that I think it might be, and kind of express why I'm having that conversation with them. So, I noticed that whenever you all have this type of conversation, this is the response that you get. Is that a common thing that happens with the two of you all, just so they can kind of start seeing those things amongst themselves? I will say that when I do people of color in their relationships, it's much easier for me. Unfortunately, it's much easier for me to kind of skirt around the mental health terms and the real clinical terms until I really get into what's going on, because it is kind of intimidating, I guess, for someone outside of your relationship to say, I'm noticing that there's some kind of issue going on here, and the issue might be you, right? And so that's me kind of pointing out flaw for it. And no one really wants to be the target, especially in couples therapy, but no one wants to be the target of another person, especially with someone that they don't really know. So I'm very delicate about it when I approach that conversation. And again, it's just been much easier for me if I use terms that we use in just regular conversation versus that clinical jargon that, again, sometimes can be intimidating.
Is it difficult overcoming? Let me say it like this. There's always this term called generational curses. And I use this loosely, like the sins of our fathers. And I mean that by stuff that we carry on generation to generation. Like if somebody's father just was abusive or whatever it was, or just not, even though he was in the home, he was not there. His heart and his mind just wasn't there for them in the way that they wanted to. How do you help them overcome that aspect by letting them know it's like, hey, even though you grew up with this, you don't have to continue this with your children and with your family? Because a lot, and this is a conversation I've been having with my friends that come on when we talk about marriages and things like that. And I see it a lot on the internet, that people want to get married and they want to be in a relationship, but they don't know why. And they don't know what a marriage or a real relationship looks like. So they struggle and they just do what they know. And then a lot of those relationships don't work. So how do you help them to understand, like, just because you saw it like this doesn't mean you're supposed to be that way either. It takes work and it takes time.
I mean, even just saying what you said, I think is an easy way to kind of start that conversation. But a lot of people do feel like, because this is how I learned it. This is the way that I know, and this is the way that it has to be. And I always tell people that if change couldn't happen, there'd be no reason for you to come see me, right?
Right.
So if you thought that how your father behaved, how your grandfather behaved, how all these other people in your family behaved or acted on a consistent basis was the right thing to do, then there'd be no need for you to come to see me and work through anything. You know, there's obviously going to be some things that you pick up from your family that are going to be positive and negative in your interactions with people. And I think specifically with African Americans, people of color, there's also that we're a strong culture, right? We go through a lot. Historically, we've been through a lot. And so we it's difficult for us to be vulnerable in a therapy session and say, okay, well, I knew this was wrong the whole time, but haven't wanted to address it because I didn't feel like I could. Right. So I think the easiest way to approach the conversation is that, I mean, we can make some change here. We can do something where you feel a lot better about what's going on for you. And obviously I'm going to need you to buy into that. And I think one easy way for people to buy into that is I try to give people very small wins throughout from the very beginning of therapy. So it might be, I want you to journal for 5 minutes a day. And if they're able to do that, then it's like, okay, well, something's working, right? And then what did you notice in your journaling? And then pick something out of there. And then maybe we can affect this pretty quickly. So giving them some small wins so they can have that buy-in before we get to the big stuff that's going to require them to really commit to it.
Okay. There was another point I wanted to push when it comes to seeking out the necessary help. So, and this is in our community, and myself, I had a conversation with somebody about it before, and I thought it was rather careless for somebody to put it out there the way it is. I get it, but I still think it's kind of careless, and I think it's kind of dangerous. One gentleman, he was a pro basketball player, and he said that Black men in the community don't need. He didn't say they don't need, but they rather talk to their barbers when for their mental health issues. And I kind of cringed when I heard that, because I said, that's not really good information to put out there. And I mean, yeah, I talk to my buddies and, I might say such and such to the barber or whatever, but they can't give you the clinical breakdown of what's wrong with you or what you're dealing with or how to address it properly. They can probably co-sign or just say, hey, just relax. But I just felt that was really cringeworthy when somebody did that. And I think that's something, again, in our communities, it seems like we look for excuses to not see individuals like yourself, not to get the necessary help that we need because of comments like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I hear people say things like that all the time. And that even made me kind of drop a little bit when you said to talk to your barber. I will say I will say a good thing that we do is that we do talk to people. So, there's no harm in talking to your barber. There's no harm in talking to your pastor, to your mentor, or all these other people who don't have that clinical education to be able to move you through your process. But I think the key thing to remember is that those people can talk to you about what's going on right now, here in the moment, make you feel better right here in the moment, versus someone that's in the clinical realm. Our role is to really figure out how'd you get there in the first place, right? And what's causing you to be here right now, and how can I break that pattern so it doesn't happen in the future? And so, you can have that conversation with your barber, and they can give you advice. But I'm not sure when you talk to your friends, sometimes they'll even say some things where you're like, I would never do that, right? So it is okay to have those conversations with those people, but not in lieu of you seeking out help to disrupt what's going on that got you there in the first place.
Right. Now, as far as the generational differences and how we were talking about that, how things played out, how do you ensure, what types of steps or advice do you give to ensure that they don't drop their struggles on their children? Or do you bring the children in on the counsel sessions, or is that something down the line if it needs to happen?
Yeah, I mean, if it needs to happen for anyone, I'll bring in anyone that might be affected by the problem, contributing to the problem. I do like to have a session with the couple and their kids if the kids are still in the home, so that we can have so that the kids really can see that there's some kind of progress being made, and so they can kind of open their eyes to see what's going on. And I guess to clarify, I guess whenever I talk to people about these things and about the fact that your kids are being affected by it, that's also a really sensitive conversation to have with people, because sometimes it might come off as I'm accusing you of being a bad parent, or I'm saying that there's something bad that your kid's taken from the interaction you have with your husband or your wife. And so I really try to be careful with having that conversation about how it's affecting their kids, but more so, well, can you give me an example of people in your life that this might have affected aside from your husband or your wife, right? And if they bring up their kids, then let's have a conversation about it. But I always like to let them be the ones to bring it up, just in case and it really kind of depends on the person also, I guess, to be fair also, but just so I can make sure that I'm being sensitive to the fact that we're about to have a conversation about their kids, and then going from that situation of, your kid was affected in this situation. Tell me how we could have done it differently, and then go down that route. And that really takes work, because again, that's something that this person's gone through for a long time, and I'm trying to unravel 30 years of the same type of behavior and try to make sure it doesn't go on to their kids. So it's some work you have to do in those situations.
Right. Now, I want people to understand this as well, because again, we are talking about in sickness and health, and sickness and we're just throwing the mental health aspect into this. But like I said earlier, I watched my father succumb to cancer, and I watched my mother and everybody do everything that we could to help him out, but eventually, God has his way on certain things. But I think also people need to understand that whether you're married and dealing with the death in the family, or like a mother or father, or your spouse, that mental health still plays a large part in that. Because like I said in the beginning, like the question I was asking, does anybody ever put mental well-being in the aspect like they do physical well-being? And I don't think, and again, I just don't think a lot of people understand that mental health doesn't just start at being bipolar. It doesn't just start at having a bad day. There's things that happen outside outside your home that affect you, that relates to, you might need something emotionally addressed or mentally addressed, or whatever the case may be. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Did I make sense with that?
So I think so. So I'll answer what I think I heard and see if that's right. So you mentioned like your father and how he had cancer, and you went through, you saw how everybody kind of rallied together and took care of what they needed to take care of.
Right. And then, there's always the aftermath. So, what now? That's basically what I'm talking about, the aftermath of things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So because not everybody walks into a marriage knowing they have bipolar disorder or they have major depressive disorder, we don't always know what we're committing to whenever we say, in sickness and in health. So
right.
I may see that you have difficulty getting out of bed. I may see that you are easily distracted, having difficulty concentrating, but I don't know that that's any kind of mental health concern until someone tells me. So I think that there's kind of an automatic commitment to that physical health aspect, just because of the fact that, people can go to a doctor and get a test done and say your cancer is still there, or you have high blood pressure and it's not getting better. But with mental health, it's really my assessment as a therapist, psychiatrist assessment. There's just us thinking about what we see, and we put a name to it. And so it's a different thing, right? It's because there's not a lab that you can pull up to say that this person has schizophrenia. It's really more so me observing your behaviors and see what's going on. So I think that it's really easy for us to say in sickness and in health, and we understand that we got to be there 100% for the physical health part of it. Right. But it's a little bit more difficult because we don't always know what mental health thing they're walking into. And also, sometimes when people have more severe mental health stuff going on, we got to make sure that we're being smart about what we're walking into. So I think it's just a lot of, there's just they go together, obviously physical and mental health, but there's just a lot of additional nuances that go with mental health that I think just requires a lot of education up front, so that if it does come up later in the relationship, it's something that can be affected and treated correctly. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Right. Yeah. Just basically, because situations arise that affect everyone, and just basically how they should handle it, what it looks like, how it feels, and I just want people to understand that it doesn't start and end at someone being physically sick. Doesn't mean you don't need help with something else, because seeing things can stress you out or challenge you mentally, that you might need to handle something, but don't be afraid to handle it.
Yeah. Okay. So just to comment on that real quick. Yeah, definitely for people that have to go through caring for a family member or watching a family member deteriorate or whatever the physical health concern is, it's, we have a tendency to neglect our own health whenever we're taking care of someone else. And it definitely is difficult to watch one who you saw as a strong person, who guided you throughout your life, now be the person that requires your help. And it can have long lasting effects on people, because you view your mom and dad, for example, as these strong people. And then now you're having to approach your relationship with them differently. So it's a challenge for people. And it's definitely something that I think a lot of people don't think about. Let me get in and take care of my mental health while my spouse, family, whatever is going through this mental health, this physical health concern. Because it almost feels selfish sometimes to say, well, let me go get some help for myself also while my family member's over here sick. So
I understand that. Let me ask you this: what about? And this is something that's come up in a few conversations, a couple episodes. So, like before you, I had a couple episodes in sickness and in spiritual health, and we talked about that the dividing line between faith and then also clinical health. And the one thing I had talked to Michaela about, I said, because my father was a minister, and he told me, but and I share this all the time, that before you get married, to get some spiritual therapy, but he said also go get some clinical therapy, just so we could have both sides of the coin. Now, a lot of people don't agree with it, especially on the spiritual side of it. So I just kind of wondered, what's your take on it?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that I don't agree with it. I'm a Christian myself, so I enjoy church and I enjoy what a pastor can give me.
Right.
I think where it becomes an issue is throughout our lives, throughout our generations, it's always been to go to the pastor, to go to the church, and some people are going to be. It's almost like they potentially be more invested in what the pastor's going to tell me versus what the clinical person tells me. So they overlap, obviously, because there's something that are going to be helpful for both people to say to you. But I believe that if you feel like your pastor or a member of the church is going to be someone that you want to have their opinion about things, that it's okay for you to reach out to them. But I also, again, feel like a therapist is going to be someone that is going to be able to go to I guess for both of them, they're just at different levels. There's different levels of conversation that you're having when you're talking to someone in a spiritual sense versus a clinical sense. And again, me being a Christian myself, I usually don't go into too much of the spiritual stuff when I'm in a session, because I like for there to be that kind of that clear divide of this is what I can do for you versus what your pastor can do for you.
Right.
Really, my goal is to see, how did we even get here in the first place? Why do you even feel like why do you even need to be seeing me right now? And but again, I want to encourage people to go to talk to whomever they want to talk to get some kind of help, because not getting any help is usually what the problem has been. But just be smart about the help that you're seeking, and really know what you're looking for out of the help that you're getting. So if someone wants to go to both, I think that's fine. But just knowing that either one of them is only going to be able to go so far based on their education, training, knowledge, and so just really know what you're going to your pastor or your therapist for.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. What would be some practical solutions or some actionable steps that family? Hold on, let me back that up. If someone's in a relationship, not necessarily black or white, or just in general, somebody's in a relationship and they see their spouse or significant other behaving in a way that's concerning to them, what is the best practical way that they could try to get them to see someone like you without, again, offending them or making them get defensive and just reject the whole idea itself?
I think, probably the best thing is just talking about it and really having even some kind of conversation about what's going on first. If you come to me out of nowhere and say, Brandon, I really think you need to get into therapy, of course I'm going to be offended, right? And I'm going to be, I'm not going to want to take your directive because I feel like I'm under attack, right? But if we've been having this conversation, when you first start to notice it, like have a conversation about what's going on so that 6 months down the line, 5 years down the line, whatever it is, when it does come up and you feel like, okay, now's the time for Brandon to get into therapy, you all have already been having that conversation about it. And it's not something that's just coming out of the blue. And Brandon will have seen that this is something that has affected you. His behavior has affected you. So, that person will be more likely, I would think, to go into therapy versus if I've been seeing these things and I haven't brought it up at any point and then say, okay, well, you need to get into therapy because therapy already kind of carries a negative connotation for some people. And you want to, I guess, ease into it by just having had a conversation about the behaviors that you notice. I think another way to make it easier for someone, if someone is defensive and they don't feel like they need to go, you having a conversation with the therapist ahead of time and seeing, maybe we can have a session together at the very beginning so that I can kind of tell you what's going on in front of the therapist, or you doing just a consultation with the therapist and saying, okay, spouse, I want you to talk to this therapist for 15 minutes and just let them know just talk to them first. Cause we, usually that first conversation, we're just trying to see if there's a good match. And if you have that conversation with me and say, well, my wife is telling me I want to get into therapy, that she wants me to get into therapy because through a glass when we had an argument, then usually that's kind of a cue to me that person maybe isn't going to be as invested if I take a certain approach. So I think there's a number of different things that someone can do to increase the likelihood that someone's gonna go. But at the core, at the very beginning, just having a conversation whenever you see those things come up is key, because no one likes to be blindsided by anything.
Right. Communication is a valuable tool in relationships. Me and my wife, we communicate regularly about just about everything. I believe she was trying to get me to do something, to seek some kind of therapy or something. It was a while ago, but I really wasn't hearing what she was saying. So she went to my mother, and my mom said something. I said, yeah, okay. And I don't remember what came of it. I think I did it. And then she was upset about it. but I get it, but we do communicate. We try to keep the doors open for communication so that we don't miss out on what's happening. Because I've been going through some things the last couple months, and they've been pretty tough. And I think what keeps me grounded is because I have so many different outlets that I can use to get rid of the stress. One of those outlets being podcasting. The other, I picked up painting and other things that I do that pretty much keep me grounded. But communicating with my wife is the biggest thing. And I think we had a little moment today that was semi-verbal, semi-nonverbal. I just came up, asked her if she was all right, just kind of held her for a while. And then I can pick up certain things that are going on. Like, I'm like, well, you hesitated when you answered that. She said, well, you hesitated when you answered it. Then eventually it'll come out. So those are some of the things that we do. And that kind of leads into the next question, like what are some other actionable steps families or couples can take to prioritize the mental health in their relationship? And like I said, we communicate a lot, we do a lot of things together, but we also slow down to pay attention to what's happening to each other. Would you have any, I don't know if there's a clinical term for that, but that's what we do. But would you have any other information or anything to share along those lines?
Yeah. So I think having, like you said, having an outlet for yourself is an important piece. In relationships. I think one thing that people tend to do is they stop becoming, like they start to become like the relationship. So they stop becoming husband and this is my life. They stop becoming wife and this is my life, and they end up being this is us. And there's no longer me involved. And they feel like they have to sacrifice me so that we can make sure that us is okay. So in encouraging people to get out and do things for yourself is a great way for you to allow your spouse to be able to maintain their own mental health and for you to maintain your mental health also. And so your wife may not want to go to the gym, or she might want to go to the football game. She might want to go do, other things that are more fun for it, and allowing them to have that space to do that is one of those things that it just allows you to still be able to say, this is something that I do that's for me, so I can make sure that I'm good, so I can make sure then that the unit's good. And it's not always us trying to work on us together. I got to make sure that I'm still doing some things for myself. So, if it's something where you have to pay to go to something, go to a football game, go to whatever, something you enjoy, and you have to spend money on it, that's one thing you can do. Or it might be something as simple as, I want to go for a walk when I get off work, or I'm going to take a longer drive home because I enjoy driving. So I'm going to take a longer drive home so I can have a little bit of time in my car by myself, or I'm going to listen to a certain genre of music. So there's a number of different things that you can do, but really managing to make sure you take care of yourself, I think is a quick, easy step that you can do to make sure you're prioritizing your mental health.
Right. Yeah. And that's something, and you're spot on with the gym. Cause I used to like to go to the gym a lot, but she made me stop. Cause I used to go at night because I like to be in the gym when there's nobody there. But, she started, so, she gets nervous because, stuff that goes on in the city and this. And so I had to get rid of my membership. But then, my solution was like, why don't you just go with me? But that's not something she wants to do. We also have a thing where I'm down here a lot in my studio working on whatever I'm working on, and she's upstairs, and I always take the time to come up and give her time. And then, I'll go back to mine. And then, we'll watch TV, but then there's, like you said, she has her thing, I have my thing. Like, she has TV shows that I don't like watching. So I'm like, you can take that and do what you want with it. And we have that understanding. She doesn't like it all the time, but we have that understanding. But I think that was really some valuable information right there about, taking some time to yourself and understand that you just because you're married, you don't have to stop being who you are. You have to stop doing some of the things that you used to do, but you don't have to stop being who.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was gonna say is just what you said. You can't always do the thing. You can't hang out always with the same people you hung out with and go to the same places you used to go to. But, and again, it really all goes back to having a conversation with your wife or your husband and saying, I still want to be able to essentially go places without you feeling like you have to come with me. And same with you. I don't want to feel like I have to go. I don't want to feel like I have to watch this show with you just because we're married. I want to be able to go do something while you're watching your show. Then we can come together and we're a happier person because we got to do what we wanted to do. But yeah, you're right. You can't be, you're always hanging out with, the homies on the weekend. You got to be able to change it up.
Not the single homies. They're done. All right. Hey, Brandon, I've enjoyed this conversation with you. Just one last thing. And I want to ask you, do you have any type of resources or tools or websites or books, like anything of that nature that people can research for this, if they have, mental health concerns or anything that could help them out if you know anything offhand?
Yeah, so probably an easy resource for everybody to access pretty easily. There's every state has the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they have a website. They have a national website, and usually they have local chapter websites, but they usually have a lot of information about criteria for diagnoses, different approaches to those diagnoses. They have support groups for people that are going through specific mental health concerns. So that's a good place to always refer people if they want to just have to dive into mental health and figure out kind of what's going on before they seek out any type of help. National Alliance on Mental Illness website is a great start for people. And then also, so I always tell people to be careful on like YouTube or TikTok with researching mental health stuff. But there are some, I say you can kind of tell, I guess I can tell when it's someone that's a reputable source for mental health. I can't, and if I think of her name, I guess I can send it to you afterwards. But there's a lady on YouTube I think she's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she talks about just different mental health topics. And she puts it in really layman terms. So it's like two people that have no clue about mental health can talk to each other versus a therapist talking to a client or two therapists talking to each other. So I'll find her information and send that over to you. But NAMI website is a good start. And then, of course, the 988 helpline is the 24-hour suicide hotline that you can use. And so you can text or call 988 on your phone. But also, if you go to their website, they have a lot of resources for mental health.
Okay. Great. Do you have if someone wants to reach out to you, you have any social media platforms, or somebody wants to send you a DM or kind of pick your brain, or somebody in your area wants to set up a consultation or anything?
Yeah, so I'm behind the times. I don't have any professional social media, but my practice, again, is called The Empowering Space in Dallas. The website's theempoweringspace.com. So there's two E's in the middle. And then my email is just my first name at theempoweringspace.com. So you can reach out to me there if you had any more questions about anything that I said or didn't say here. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Okay. And you take all forms of insurance?
Yeah.
All carriers?
Yeah. So pretty much all major insurances I take. If you don't have insurance, I mean, there's other options that I can help you with. If you want to see me specifically or want to see someone in your area, I can help you figure out where to go.
Okay. Now, is the Empowering Space only in Texas, or is that national?
So it is in Texas, Ohio, and Mississippi, I believe, are the three states. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But the practice itself is based out of Dallas.
Okay. I didn't know we had it here in Ohio. That's good. That's really good information. Okay. And if somebody's in Ohio or Mississippi, they can just go to the website and get the information or set up an appointment with anybody else.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Just it's pretty user friendly. You can go over and see where to choose who you want to talk to, or if you want to just get some information. The website's actually really user friendly, so you'll be able to ask whatever question you want, and then the admin staff normally gets back to you pretty quickly.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So I just wrote all that down. That's some good information. I'm gonna use all that, post that on my social medias for everybody. Brandon, my friend, my brother, I appreciate you coming on the Thursday podcast. My wife's not home for you to meet her right now, but she's always out and about doing something. But I appreciate you, man, and I hope this is the last time that we communicate. If you need us to do anything that, if it's in our power to do it, we'll do what we can to support you or whatever. If you have any programs going on that you want put on social media or, like a flyer or something, we'll do that for you. That's no problem. That's what family do. That's how me and the wife, that's how we do things. We support everybody. We support our own, and we support everybody else that does the good work. So it's not just about color or race. It's, if you're doing the good work and it's legit work, we'll be right there behind you with our hands on your shoulders.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Cool. For our listeners, make sure you follow, and subscribe the Thursday podcast. Follow us on our social medias, Facebook, IG. Just look for the Two Hearts. YouTube is what we're streaming on. Spotify, all platforms. And on X, just go look for MSTAJ Brandon_HARK. So until next time, we want everybody to continue to be positive, be loved, continue to pray along the way. And, if you have any other questions for Brandon, reach out to him, reach out to us, and, we'll pass some information along to him. Okay? All right, Brandon. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.